Matt Damon.
Matt Damon. Matt
Matt
Damon. Matt
Damon.
Damon. Welcome to episode 90 of the Backlot 605 podcast. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Casey Kelderman.
I'm Brian Mensing.
Brian, we are joined today by Backlot 605's own Derek Vierink.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Hey
Derek.
guys,
I'm sorry, go ahead. We're going to have an awkward...
I was just gonna say hi. Thanks for having me.
There we go. He got his introduction in. Good. We brought Derek on because we feel that at the end of every miniseries, as we wrap them up and bring in the comedy as we want to do, you know, we maybe lean a little darker in some of the previous episodes, and then when we kind of wrap it up with a little lighter fare, and that seems to be the trend of us bringing Derek on the show to bring light to our show.
Hey,
Happy to help.
I'll take it.
And this time we're gonna do it with puppets. We're gonna do it with puppets because we're talking about Team America: World Police from 2004 as we wrap up our patriotic miniseries with, God damn it, maybe the most patriotic film of them all, or the most satirical patriotic film of them all.
I'm gonna go with the latter.
Yes, I think so. But before we get into that, let's jump into a new little segment I think we're slowly introducing to the show, what we've been watching recently. So we talked about this before we started recording. One of the new big releases that just came out this past weekend, and we talked about it on our coming soon from last episode, was The Rental, which is a James Franco. I almost said James Franco. Dave Franco directed, and he also co-wrote the film with Joe Swanberg. Stars his I believe his wife. Are they married? Allison Brie and him.
That's a good question. I don't remember.
His lady, Allison Brie, and Dan Stevens in this relationship drama wrapped up in a sweet bow of a thriller. So I know, Derek, you also had the chance to watch this. I watched it as well. What were your brief thoughts on the film?
I really liked it. It's a great, promising start for Dave Franco as a director. I think he's got a pretty savvy eye for assembling a movie at this point. And the movie he did do here really straddles the line between thriller and horror, and kind of gave audiences, the best of both worlds, I would say. He definitely knows how to mount the suspense and tension. So I'm certainly happy to see where he goes from here, and I'll especially be curious if he gets to 400 directing credits like his brother James has.
You started with the mounting of this and that. I mean, that was like the mounting of the camera to the tripod. Well, at least he's got that going for him.
Yeah, that's really the standout I had with this too, is Dave Franco in his directing. I was really surprised by some of the stuff he could pull off in it. I didn't love the movie like I wanted to. I really didn't. I felt that the first 2/3 are really great, especially for a directorial debut, and then the last half of the film is like the thriller aspect of it, and it didn't connect for me. It didn't work fully, and the ending really didn't work for me. So he was 3/4 of the way there for me in this one, but I think it's a very strong directorial debut. He gets some great performances out of the actors in this movie. I mean, Allison Brie, probably to be expected, working with her husband, boyfriend, whatever they are at this point. But Dan Stevens is really good in this movie. The whole cast, I mean, is really great. And I like that he went to what would probably work with a minimalistic budget. You know, he had 5 actors in the movie, all set in pretty much one location, used people he knew. Yeah, but I'm curious where the Dan Stevens connection came in. I was trying to figure that out throughout the movie, and I'm like, maybe it's the Joe Swanberg thing, and he kind of introduced him to Dan. Maybe that's how it worked, or maybe I'm not thinking of something where Allison and Dan worked on something. I don't know.
Maybe it's something Dan just heard something through the grapevine and says, hey, this sounds like something I want to be a part of.
Yeah, and he's no stranger to the low-budget thriller. I mean,
right.
That's where he got his name, so... Yeah, it's a strong directorial debut, and I mean, I recommend people checking it out still.
And they're married.
They are married. Okay.
They are married in 2017.
All right. We got that cleared up. You guys watch any other newer releases that you guys want to bring up?
I myself have been so busy with family stuff over the weekend and whatnot. I haven't watched anything new. The most recent thing I watched was a rewatch of Ready Player One. So I know with that movie, that's a hit and miss with some people and whatnot. It's one of the movies that I enjoy it, but yeah, that's the only most recent thing I've had an opportunity to catch up on.
Yeah, the only other ones that I had were from ones from last year, some romantic comedies. Just briefly, Always Be My Maybe, really charming, really fun.
Mhm.
The two leads are great. Keanu steals the movie. He's something in that movie. I loved it.
Keanu is amazing in that
It's
movie because he
great.
plays such a meta version of himself.
Oh, I loved it. The other one that I was surprised by, we watched The Wrong Missy, which is
On
the
purpose?
yes, we did. We were just what did we oh, we watched The Rental right before that, and we kind of wanted something a little lighter fare, and that was kind of the first thing we came across on Netflix, and I have been regretting watching this for a long time, and I was pleasantly surprised that I liked this movie. I don't know what it
Really?
is. I liked The Wrong Miss. It's one of the better Happy Madison uh, films to go out there. It reminded me of 90s comedies. That's why I really clung on to it, especially in the directing of the movie and the style of it. It has the Sandler stuff as you expect, complete with Rob Schneider pretending to be a Hawaiian dude with no fingers.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I dug it. It was fun. It was a breezy 90-minute comedy, and it worked for me. I get why it didn't work for a lot of people. I definitely get that.
How do you see the chemistry between Lauren Lapkus and David Spade?
It was fine. It was serviceable for what it needed to be. Spade is too old to play the part, but that's neither here nor there. But
Right.
uh, it was fine, and a lot of the stuff I was hearing about the criticisms is the Lauren Lapkin. Is that her last name?
Lapkus.
Lapkus. Uh, how annoying she was, and I honestly didn't find her that annoying. I thought she was pretty funny in the movie, and it felt like she was going off script a lot, and a lot of it worked for me. So definitely not everybody's cup of tea, but yeah, it worked for the most part for me. But yeah, that's all I watched. Yeah.
What about you, Derek?
The only other new movie I watched besides The Rental was another recent IFC genre release that came to the West Mall here in Sioux Falls, and that is The Wretched, directed by the Pierce brothers, about a teenager who spends the summer working at some sort of marina place, living with his dad, only to find that his neighbor is up to some weird stuff. This is much more of a straight horror movie than The Rental, and I thought it was fine. I probably ultimately didn't like it as much as The Rental in terms of my week's viewing. But again, you can kind of see that this is kind of probably a stepping stone movie, and probably because of the nature of this being one of the major COVID summer theatrical releases, that this probably will lead to the Pierce brothers getting to do bigger and better things.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I was kind of surprised that Casey hadn't actually seen this one before The Rental, to be honest, because I figured this would have been more up his alley.
Yeah, we decided to stay home on the Saturday night. We wanted to go to the theaters, but we ended up staying home and watching movies at home because we're lazy piles.
Yep.
And no, it's just so nice to just be able to watch some of these movies at home. But The Wretched is not. We did not watch that one. We watched The Rental, and after hearing Kayla's thoughts and my thoughts on the film, we probably should have went with The Wretched. I think we would have liked that one more. So I am definitely planning on watching that this week. But yeah, should we move on to our news segment for this week? We got some big news to talk about.
News.
Brian, you want to take over and let us know what we're missing in the news?
I'm glad you got this kept up here because, man, I've been flying on fumes at the moment. So, yes, the first thing we have here for the sake of this week's news is we have an update to Bill and Ted Face the Music. And that it is going to be getting a dual release for the theatrical and the premium VOD. Not uncommon with we're talking about COVID here. It is September 1st. We are going to get in select theaters and premium VOD Bill and Ted Face the Music. And this is where I'm hoping that with some of these little smaller films like The Wretched and The Rental, that the West Mall will be so kind as to allow me to be able to see this on the big screen. How about you? What do you guys think in regards to? Do you think this is a smart play for Bill and Ted, or do you think having maybe if they would have pushed it back with some of the other new releases?
Derek, you can go ahead.
All right. I like this for 3 reasons. One, we get to see this movie very,
Now.
very soon. The fact that it's a month away makes me very excited. Certainly with all the things that happened, which also included seeing the new trailer this week, the Comic-Con panel, where they, got the buzz going even more. It's just kind of relieving, like as we keep reading about all these movies getting pushed out, that this is still happening very soon, and that's great. 2, I think this is going to be a very good VOD experiment, because outside of like those family movies like Trolls and Scooby-Doo, this is one that I'm going to be very curious how well it will do on VOD, especially given the scarcity of big new movies recently. The fact that this is a known entity, hey, it's the new Bill and Ted movie, the first one in about 30 years. That's going to stoke a lot of curiosity. So I'm very excited for that. And third, the fact that theaters will still have the opportunity to show it, I think that's a very good thing for the independent theaters that have chosen to be open during this pandemic, trying to get by with whatever they can. I mean, it's one thing, it's cool, if they get to show movies like The Wretched and The Rental, but the fact that, hey, you can show Bill and Ted in about a month. And also this is good for you because AMC and Regal and Cinemark are not going to show this movie because this is on VOD and therefore it breaks their policy. So for those indie theaters, like, here is a gift to you, a big franchise movie that you and you alone get to show. And I will be renting this on VOD. I'll be watching it the very minute this drops that Monday night at 11 p.m. beforehand. But if I get the chance to see it in a theater or multiple theaters, during this time, I'm going to do it too. It's really the best of both worlds, and I personally can't wait.
I was of 2 minds when I heard this news. One was before I watched the trailer, and it was still going off my thoughts on the first trailer they dropped, and I was not a fan of the trailer. Still very excited for the movie, but when I heard this, I was thinking, are we really gonna throw Bill and Ted just straight to VOD? And then I kept thinking to myself, well, going straight to VOD isn't what it was even 3 years ago. It's we're in
last year,
even compared to last year, yes, but if you look at it now, you have movies like the Trolls World Tour and Scoob, and even now looking at like the Rental and then the Wretched that did both the theatrical and the streaming to VOD release simultaneously. I think this is a good move. I think this is because Bill and Ted is a movie that you don't necessarily need to see in the theater. It's one of those movies that it's not a Wonder Woman, it's not a Tenet, it's not Mulan. It's not that type of movie that you need to rush out to the theater. Because, I mean, for most of us, how have you guys watched Bill and Ted throughout your life? It's been at home on your couch, right?
Yeah. VHS, TV, etc.
And if this is the case, it's going to fit in right with how most people have grown up watching Bill and Ted. You're going to be sitting on your couch, and you'll have your family. And if you want to, invite some friends over, you'll stream, Bill and Ted Face the Music. And then when I watched this new trailer that dropped, I'm in now. I'm in now. The first one I was a little iffy on, and I was kind of waiting to see how they would deal with the relationship with the daughters. And I am digging what they're doing here. It seems
and I love how they're kind of playing off of the first 2 films as well.
Yes, the daughters are literally Bill and Ted. And I like the fact that we're going to have dual storylines going on here. Bill and Ted are going to go to the future and try to figure out how to write the song that'll unite the world. And then the daughters are going back in time and doing what their dads did in the first movie. And I like that, and I like the banter between them. And I think that's going to be the strongest point of this movie. Now, after watching Always Be My Maybe and seeing Keanu's, this Keanu after the Keanu Sans, his comedic chops in that, I'm excited to see what Keanu can do here, because I feel that they haven't shown us a lot of the good jokes in this movie and how Bill and Ted are going to be 30 years after Bogus Journey. So yeah, I'm excited for this, and I do expect at least one or a couple theaters in South Dakota will carry this movie. possibly some drive-ins too. I think that would be a lot of fun if some drive-ins booked Bill and Ted Face the Music. So I'm excited for this.
I would have to agree with you. I think that the second trailer definitely is a lot better experience than what we got out of the first trailer. But the one thing about that second trailer that really hooked me to go to see it, I want to know how this plays out in the first place, is one of the scenes that has death where he's in the truck is got Ted's dad in the driver's seat. I want to know, how does Ted's dad get involved in all of this here? Because he was always kind of like a sideline character. Now he's going to be full force into all of this here, and I want to know how they incorporate him, because I think having him come back too has been a fantastic addition to this, and I can't wait to see this.
Should we move on to our next piece of news that we got here?
Slight break there. All right, so next piece of news. So somebody's this guy that we just talked about here a little bit here. This guy, this Dave Franco guy who made the rental here. Looks like he is up to play Vanilla Ice in an upcoming biopic. Mr. Dave Franco plays Mr. Rob Van Winkle. I get where they might be going with this here, but I think I need to see Dave in full-on Vanilla Ice-esque looking thing, because right now I'm not seeing it yet. Like, I can picture him doing the job because I think he's a fantastic actor. I'm not picturing him as Rob Van Winkle. So I don't know what I think about this yet.
I love this casting. I love it, because if you look at how Dave Franco talks, just in any role, if you look at any role that he's been in, from like Now You See Me or the Neighbors, he talks like Vanilla Ice. If you think about it, just the way just in his inflection, you give him that blonde hair and you spike it back, give him some baggy pants. He's going to be Vanilla Ice. Like, this makes sense to me. And I can see them. They're definitely going to I think they'll lean into this. Will have some comedic elements to it as well. Just because of who they have cast. And I mean, Vanilla Ice himself doesn't take himself too seriously anymore. He's playing, he played himself in The Wrong Missy. I mean, that's one of the punchline jokes of the movie, is Vanilla Ice shows up in the movie.
Now you really sold me.
Did I, Brian, though? Did I? He's funny in the movie, but as I'm sitting there watching that, I'm like, that's going to be Dave Franco, and I can see it. So I'm all for this. There is no director attached, but after watching The Rental, let's just let him do it. Let's let Dave Franco direct himself in the Vanilla Ice biopic. Derek, what are your thoughts on this casting?
I like it. I've always enjoyed seeing Dave Franco on any sort of screen, even going back to like when he did the awkward last season of Scrubs as one of the interns. And I think he's always been kind of due for a star break, because you look at what he's done, he's usually been like sidekick, like second banana to Zac Efron in the Neighbors movies, or fourth banana in the Now You See Me movies. The closest I think he ever got to a lead was the movie you guys brought up last week, which was Nerve, which he was co-lead with Emma Roberts.
And even then, that was more of a side-by-side.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
even the movie he was in with his brother, Disaster Artist. I mean, he's technically the main character in that movie, but he's second fiddle to his brother.
Yeah. So I think he's due for a star turn, and this is just as good a thing as anybody. What I'm curious about, what you guys kind of touched on, is I'm very curious what the tone of this movie is going to be, because it obviously just can't be a serious, VH1 style music biopic, but it also can't devolve into complete, parody like The Disaster Artist. So I'm very curious how it's going to find the median between those two extremes.
Oh,
but I
easily.
think they'll find a way to make it work.
It's going to be that time period of Vanilla Ice's career when he was with the DIY network.
Which also begs to mind, if they do this movie, they have to do a recreation of either the filming of Cool as Ice or the making of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Secret of the Ooze.
Yes. I want both of those.
We need to have the same scene play out from Secret of the Ooze, but from Vanilla Ice's perspective.
Yes.
Where it's legitimately Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show up. That's in the movie. Like, they're not shooting the movie. They're at a Vanilla Ice concert, and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show up. That should be the tone of this movie. I would like if they maybe leaned into a little bit into the satire of it. I mean, like I said, Vanilla Ice, he's not. It's not like they're trying to make the Queen biopic. He's not Queen. He's Vanilla Ice, and I
Mhm.
think Vanilla Ice understands who he is now at this point, and I think he'd be all for a more parody of his own life and doing something like I just said with the turtles showing up and the actual turtles. So I'm excited for this. This seems like a fun role for him to take on.
I just need Dave Franco doing the ninja rap, and I'll be okay. All right. So speaking of mutants, nice segue there,
There we
Mr.
go.
Casey, is that we had a new trailer, a new poster for the New Mutants, and as you so well put it, hey, we're even getting to keep our current August release date. Um, I've tried. I'm not. I don't even remember if I even watched this trailer. To be perfectly honest, I think I remember watching it, but I'm not even percent sure. I do dig the new poster. The weird aspect that it is.
The Dream Warriors poster.
Yes, very much so.
It's literally a ripoff of the Dream Warriors poster.
Hey, sometimes you don't break what's not broken.
Which is the tone they have said this movie is going for.
Yeah. What do you think of the new trailer?
I thought the trailer was great. I've made the joke a million times since we've done this show. I mean, when we started the show, New Mutants was supposed to be coming out.
You're not wrong.
And that was almost 2 years ago now. So I've been excited to watch this movie, and it's like we've been waiting, like I said, 2 years for this. Derek, you know off the top of your head, what was the original release date for this movie?
Original release date was April 13th, 2018.
Yes.
Yep.
So we have been waiting over 2 years for this movie now, and with them saying, with them keeping the August release date, I think they will. I definitely think they will, but I think we're going to see them either surprise drop it on Disney Plus or do the premium streaming what theaters are open, much like Bill and Ted.
Well, that's where I'm skeptical because, one, let's all be perfectly honest, I certainly don't think we are seeing this movie on August 28th.
Correct.
And if they were going to do a Disney Plus or a VOD streaming drop, they would have announced it as part of the Comic-Con panel that they did this past weekend, which led to the debut of that new trailer and the poster and the opening scene of the movie. I basically, through this whole pandemic, Disney has been very reluctant to make moves until the absolute last minute. And I don't think, given what they wanted to do with promoting the movie at virtual Comic-Con, I don't think they wanted that to be overshadowed by news of the New Mutants being delayed for the 37th time. So I expect within a couple of weeks, it's probably going to get delayed again. Who knows what they're going to do with that? I still don't think it's going to be debuting on Disney Plus, because if this is truly an X-Men horror movie, as they've been promoting it,
it would go to
probably
Hulu.
it's going to be too intense for Disney Plus. Disney Plus's idea of horror is like Hocus Pocus and Halloween Town. So they're not going to put the New Mutants on there.
Or Artemis Fowl.
Well, that's a horror of a different kind. But at some point, yeah, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? We'll just keep waiting endlessly. You know, this is just the movie they'll just keep from us until the end of time. But we'll see.
So I want to jump into the trailer a little bit, because as far as I know, even though we've been, this movie was shot 45 years ago, I don't know if they have ever announced officially who the villain is, but we get to see a little bit, a glimpse of who the kids are fighting in this. And after a quick Google search, I believe Mr. Sinister is supposed to be the villain in this movie, which they've been wanting to do for a very long time. One, do you think that is, is that the case here? I tend to believe so in some of the villain shots that we get in this. Two, with them, pushing this back further and further at this point, because the Fox X-Men movies are done. Like, they're done with. Dark Phoenix was the last one until this. With them continuously pushing this movie back, is there any chance that this movie will be the introduction of mutants into the MCU? Any chance? Just speculatively, do you guys think there is
No.
any percentage chance of this happening?
No. I think for the sake of the MCU, I think they've with the introduction of like Inhumans and the different ways that they've proposed the mutant genes into the MCU. I don't foresee right now them not making this their way into, because phase 4 hasn't even started yet. So the fact that we don't have Black Widow yet, everything like that, they're not going to introduce a new type of storyline type of thing into the MCU until they can start rolling out what they are already intended to roll out before the acquisition even occurred.
Yeah, and to that point, the MCU is not going to take a movie that was pretty much done when the Disney Fox transaction occurred and use that as the gateway to establish the X-Men. They're going to reshape that, refigure that out from the bottom up, and they'll execute it in their way. And they're not, they're not going to use this movie to do that, as I hate to say it. So
yeah,
I'm going to be the optimist in this little situation. I think if I were to give it a percentage chance, I would give it like a 5% chance that this is what's happening. It's not, it's not much. It's better than a 0. But with them continuously pushing the movie back, and there was extensive reshoots on this movie, I think there's a possibility. Do I think it'll happen? No. But I mean, you look at the cast of the movie. This is who Marvel would have cast in this situation, regardless if it was an MCU movie or a Fox movie. This is who Marvel proper would have cast in this type of movie. So I think there's a possibility of it. Do I think it's going to happen? No, probably not. But I think it'd be a fun way to introduce the mutants into the MCU.
I guess we'll have to see.
And at least it would give a tonal change to the Marvel movies, but I don't foresee that happening.
No, not at all.
All right. So what else do we got in the news?
All right. So going back to the wonderful world of biopics, because everybody wants to make a biopic now that Rocket Man and Bohemian Rhapsody seem to have somewhat of success, is that we are having a biopic of Canadian comedian Paul Lynde called Man in the Box, being played by Billy Eichner. I know Billy Eichner. I'm familiar with his work. As for the rest of it, I have no clue. I am totally in the shadows with this one here, so you're going to have to help me out here.
Derek, are you familiar with Paul Lynde at all? I was only literally like the day before this news dropped, I was introduced to Paul Lynde. So I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, vaguely. I mean, Paul Lynde died even before I was born. So he's, a little distant from me, but he's basically known for 2 things. Hollywood Squares, where he was a staple on that show. When I looked it up before today's taping, I saw he had done 700 episodes of Hollywood Squares in his lifetime. And then he had also become known as guest star Uncle Arthur on the sitcom Bewitched.
Right. Okay.
And so he had only ever done 10 episodes of that show, which surprised me. But of course, he became so well known for that when they did the Bewitched movie in 2005, they made a big deal of the scene where they had Steve Carell play Paul Lynde's Uncle Arthur. And many people would tell you that's the one and only saving grace of that particular movie.
I will be one of those people. I will definitely be one of those people. That was a horrible movie. I'm sorry, Will Ferrell, but it was a bad movie.
You don't have to apologize to Will Ferrell. He's used to it.
Okay, can I apologize to Nicole Kidman? Because she can at least put out good movies.
Well, I mean, Will Ferrell can too, but I was only introduced to Paul Lynde, a day or 2 before this news dropped, because I had heard of his Halloween special and an infamous Kiss performance during it on another podcast. So I decided to throw it on. It was, a 45-minute 1970s television special that aired on ABC. After seeing his mannerisms and his type of work that he did in that, yeah, Billy Eichner fits this. Mm-hmm. He has a very similar style to Paul Lynde, and Billy Eichner goes to 100 and 150. Whenever he's doing his thing, especially Billy on the Streets. So to see him, he'll dial it back for this a little bit. And I was reading a little bit on some of the synopsis and the stuff that he'll deal with here. I think this is going to be a really great role for Eichner to jump into. I mean, he hasn't been in a whole lot of movies. I can't think of a single movie that he's been in off the top of my head. He's mostly known for television.
He's known for
Well,
television, and I would even go as far as to say is that he is known for his funny side of things and whatnot. But his role on American Horror Story definitely shows that he's able to show his dramatic side as well. Like I really enjoyed him. To be perfectly honest, before American Horror Story, I wasn't even 100% sure who he was. But I do think that knowing his comedic side, knowing his dramatic side, knowing that this is Uncle Arthur, I could definitely see this.
yeah, I would say. I mean, Billy Eichner, I guess I could kind of put in that same way that I described Dave Franco, where I've enjoyed seeing him, in popping up in things. I remember when he had a sizable arc on Parks and Recreation, for example.
Yep,
Mhm.
that was
You know,
my
and here,
introduction to him.
And then also, when you heard the casting news last year that, oh, Billy Eichner is going to play Timon in the Lion King remake. I'm like, okay, I can see that.
Yep, I
You
dive
know,
right behind
and of
that
course,
too.
and of course, waiting that hour plus, for Timon and Pumbaa to show up in that movie, I'm like, oh, good, he's finally here. So I'm kind of excited to see him get an acting showcase as well. My one caveat with this is, Billy Eichner, as you just mentioned, he's the guy who turns up his personality, and it may work very well in very brief Billy on the Street type doses. I'm curious, like, can we handle, a full blown Billy Eichner feature film? He'll tone it down a little bit, but again, Paul Lynde is also, like Billy Eichner, a very flamboyant personality. So I'm curious, how he'll adapt to the character and the material.
I would be curious. I mean, obviously this isn't going to be the case because he's already pegged for it, unless there's 90,000 delays and whatnot. But we've already seen Paul Lynde per se portrayed in regards to Bewitched by a seasoned individual who does comedy and drama very well. Is to say is what if we were to say hypothetically Billy Eichner, it falls out, whatever the case is, and we put Steve Carell in there? Do you think this would still work? Because people will watch 90 minutes of Steve Carell.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know people who trucked out to that new Jon Stewart movie, Irresistible, because it was touted as, quote, the new Steve Carell movie. I could see it. Maybe there's probably a concern where they might get to a point where Steve Carell ages out of it because Paul Lynde died at 55.
True.
So you kind of need to get a younger soul in there to make it work. But there's also a thing about, I was reading an article where Billy Eichner was being interviewed about the project, and he was talking about, making sure, that gay actors get roles, being able to depict, famous gay personalities, like a Paul Lynde. So I'm still going to push for Eichner to get this role, especially if he's the one that's kind of raising it from the ground up. I would say there's really no reason to take it out of his hands at this point.
I could get behind that.
To answer your question, no, Steve Carell should not do this. Like Derek had said, people are going to go out. They're like, it's the new Steve Carell movie. And in that case, I feel people are still on, he's Michael Scott.
Yep.
And it's hard to get past that if you're playing another character, unless it's another version of Michael Scott, which Paul Lynde is not. Mm-hmm. That's where you can take Billy Eichner, who, unless you watch, Billy in the Streets, you're not really going to know this guy. You might have seen him pop up in, American Horror Story, Parks and Rec, whatever else he's popped up in, but you're not going to know him as a single character like Steve Carell is. So I think this could turn into that. This could turn into that for him, being the character he's remembered for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is that all we got for news?
That's all we got for news today.
All right,
for this week.
Let's jump to our coming soon, which you can check out every week on backlot605.com, written by Derek. So, Derek, I'm going to let you take over for this week since this is your bread and butter here. Let us know what we got coming soon for this week.
Sure. We've only got a few titles this week. It's a little bit sparse, as we get forward with the pandemic here. The content wells are drying up a little bit, but there are still some notable titles. First up we got is the new Beyonce, quote, visual album film, Black is King, which is debuting on Disney Plus on Friday, July 31st. The reason this is dropping on Disney Plus is because this is derived from the songs that Beyonce did for The Gift, which is her companion album soundtrack to the aforementioned 2019 remake of The Lion King.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be vaguely inspired by the plot of The Lion King, grafting, sort of like, like son, coming of age, and taking his position as a leader, but kind of juxtaposing it against Black history. And I don't know if you guys saw the trailer, but it certainly looks very visually lavish. Certainly no expenses being spared here. So yeah, what do you guys think?
I at least for the sake of, if there's anything we can take away from the sake of The Lion King and whatnot, is that whether it be a movie that needed to be made or not and whatnot, I do think it had a very solid cast, she being one of them. The fact that she's kind of, Disney is continuing to play into the, let's have Beyonce be part of our Disney clan crew and whatnot. It honestly, it doesn't surprise me. I think it's going to work for both of them. It's not like she's got a whole lot of shady past where Disney is concerned. She's got a very Disney-esque, she could be a Disney princess if Disney princesses were real, kind of thing. So I think her being on Disney Plus and doing this, I think is a very well fit for each other. And Casey's like, I don't even know who Beyonce is because I don't listen to R&B.
She's the girl from Austin Powers and Goldmember.
Touche, salesman.
The only visual album I care about is the unauthorized Bash Brothers Experience, so hard pass for me.
Wow.
And I'm not ever going to watch The Lion King, nor am I going to listen to a companion album to said movie. So, yeah, pass. I get that there's an audience, but not.
You're not the audience.
I'm not that audience.
Yeah, I'll fully admit I'm not, a Beyonce fan by any means. But then again, I'm not really a popular music fan by any means. Certainly a lot of people watch this, certainly get talked about a lot, and good on them, and certainly this is another feather in the Disney Plus cap by being able to say, hey, we've got the new Beyonce movie. But, it's not for everybody. So.
Right.
All right. Next up on the list, coming to VOD on Tuesday, July 28th, is Deep Blue Sea 3. For those of you who didn't even know that there was a Deep Blue Sea 2, well, this is a franchise now.
We did. We talked about it. They should, because we talked about Deep Blue Sea 2, because we both were like, why?
So this time, the plot synopsis is a marine biologist and her crew on an island face off against a group of sharks that have become super aggressive thanks to climate change. This is directed by John Pogue, who was known for The Quiet Ones back in 2014. The only name I recognize in this cast is Tanya Raymond, who was Benjamin Linus's daughter back on Lost back in the day. So yeah, other than that, it's Deep Blue Sea 3. It's people fighting sharks. So what do you think?
I think they're hoping Deep Blue Sea can become the next Sharknado. Like what? I really, and I said this before when we talked about the second one, I really like the first one because of how campy, over the top it is. I love LL Cool J in that the my head is a shark fin or whatever the hell his song is for that. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, there shouldn't have been a second one that almost looked like a rehash of the original script. I have no interest in this because I don't even see why this should even be a thing. Like, who greenlit this and said, "Hey, let's make another one"? Like, was the second one that successful enough in such a bad movie that they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna make enough money on the third one"?
I think part of it is because there really isn't a de facto shark franchise right now. I think the closest that we were getting to that was the 47 Meters Down franchise. And even then that kind of fell apart, after a second movie. But I think it's always been up for the grabbing because, we're never going to have another Jaws movie as long as Spielberg's alive, I think. So it's just kind of opened up the game for, well, somebody's got to have another shark franchise out there. And especially since this is coming out right on the eve of the annual Shark Week. Certainly Shark Fever is about to spring up just like it does every summer. So why the heck not?
I have 3 points on this. One, it should have been called Deep Blue 3. Two, if I am not mistaken, Deep Blue Sea 2 also came out during Shark Week or right after.
I think you're right.
And third, Mike Tyson's fighting a shark, so I do not care about this. That is the shark movie I want to watch. Yeah, I think Derek hits the nail on the head here. They are looking for a shark franchise because no one else is doing it. And
I'll give you that.
Who even owns the rights to Deep Blue Sea now? Who's putting these out?
Warner Brothers.
Okay,
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure it's
their
Warner Brothers.
direct-to-video department.
Okay,
Mhm.
so this is where I was talking about where VOD was where films go to die. This is where that notion comes from, Deep Blue Sea 3. So I get where there's an audience for this. Like Derek said, it's coming out right on the heels of Shark Week. People are going to be talking about sharks and wanting to watch a shark movie. And hey, look, Deep Blue Sea has a third film coming out. Let's watch that. And while we're at it, let's watch the second one we didn't know about too.
Yep, pretty much.
And of course, this will set up the pathway for Deepest Forest in a couple years. So. All right. Last movie for the week, premiering on Shudder on Thursday, July 30th, is In Search of Darkness. It's a fan-made horror documentary on 1980s horror movies. It clocks in at an impressive 4 hours and 24 minutes, and they basically go year by year through all the major horror movies of each year. And based on the trailer, they got a lot of impressive behind-the-scenes talent for this. They got John Carpenter. They got people who have passed on since the making of it, like Larry Cohen and Stuart Gordon. The usual people that you'd expect, like Barbara Crampton, Heather Langenkamp, tons of people. So yeah.
Tom Savini in there?
I don't think I saw him in there, as far as I can recall.
I do not believe he's in the movie. So we actually we covered this movie when it first dropped on. It was getting ready for its big Blu-ray release. When was that? I'm pulling it up here. Almost a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had an interview with the director David Weiner, who came on the show when we talked about the movie. I had a chance to watch the movie. It's if you're not already into 80s horror movies, I don't know if you want to sit around for 4.5 hours to watch this. So if you're into 80s horror, yeah, this is the documentary for you. They do talk to the big names, but then they also get some people that you would not expect in this documentary to talk about movies they grew up with. Like I think the most notable one probably is Corey Taylor, is very heavily featured in this documentary, talking about the movies that he grew up loving. And yeah, it's a fun 4.5 hour documentary. Like Derek said, it does go year by year talking about them, but it also does talk about different subgenres of horror during that time. It talks about like the slashers and some of the paranormal movies that we got during that time. And yeah, it's a fun watch. It'll take you a full Sunday afternoon to watch it, but yeah, I highly recommend the movie. I thought it was really great.
I'm looking for it. I'm not as much into the horror genre as definitely as you are and whatnot, but at the same time too, I'm really intrigued by this here, and I definitely want to check it out.
Yeah, it's a very good watch, and I mean I predicted it when we talked about the Blu-ray came out for it. I'm like, it'll be on Shudder in less than a year. Don't want to toot my own horn, but I was right.
Way to talk to the producers. Be like, hey, you know what you need to do?
Just put it on Shudder.
Thank you for being the champion. Now I can finally watch it.
Yes. So is that all we got for coming soon?
That is all we got.
Well, that is a slow week, but yeah, that's all right. That gives us time to catch up on some things and maybe revisit some of our favorite classics, like the movie we're going to talk about in just a minute, Team America: World Police, and we're going to talk about that after our short intermission.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
We are back on the Backlot 605 podcast here talking about Team America World Police. And full disclosure, this movie is rated R, so the conversation may turn rated R. So we are talking about Team America World Police. Fuck yeah.
You mean that this isn't a nice, wonderful puppet movie that all families can enjoy?
If you were 10-year-old me at the time, maybe. So maybe we should start there. Let's start where we first were introduced to Team America World Police, because mine was when I was 10 years old, watching WWE Monday Night Raw, and an advertisement for an upcoming movie came on during the show, which was Team America World Police. I did not watch it until I was in middle school or high school, but it was always in the back of my mind that there was an action movie with puppets from the guys who made South Park. So that was my introduction to it.
I don't even remember where or if it was a TV ad, probably something on the Cartoon Network, because obviously they're the creators of South Park, and so obviously,
Comedy Central.
Yeah, sorry, to Comedy Central. So the fact that, hey, I'm running on fumes, man, give me a break. That yes, Comedy Central, that they're a staple of Comedy Central, so more than likely it was something that was easily probably being overly talked about on there. So I more likely probably saw it about that. I know I did not see this in the theater, but I do know that the soundtrack is what definitely reeled me in. Because I know, and we'll touch base on this here, but the soundtrack to this film is by far one of the pieces that makes this movie so fantastic.
Derek, what about you? What was your first introduction to this movie?
Yep. So I got to go back a little bit
Uh-oh.
before we get to this. So August 97, I turned 13 years old. Our family decides that as my birthday present, we finally get cable. And so August 1997 is the month that South Park debuts. So I'm inundated it by that time, I'm certainly watching that first season ravenously, enjoying it, laughing my butt off as any 13-year-old kid would do. And then after that first season, maybe a little bit into the second season, I completely fall off of South Park for whatever reason. Maybe it's because I'm in high school, I got bigger fish to fry at that point. So I completely separate myself from South Park. Flash forward to the fall of 2003, which is a year before this movie comes out. South Park is starting to be released in season sets on DVD. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I'm a sophomore in college, and I decide, okay, I'm going to get the South Park DVD season sets, and I'm going to get back into the show. I start binging through it because, again, this is pre-Netflix, pre-Hulu. This is how we binge TV shows at the time, was by watching them on DVD.
Yep.
For you young whippersnappers. I get back into the show. I'm watching it live as it airs. Because again, by watching those first few seasons rapidly, you kind of get past that initial outrageous aspect, getting to the point where they're starting to do the timely social commentary that they ultimately become known for doing. And then, of course, this is also around the time where they're doing, on Comedy Central, it's new South Park Wednesday nights at 9 p.m., new episode of Chappelle's Show Wednesday at 9:30. It's the comedy power hour of TV. So I'm all in at this point. And while all this is going on, there's the chatter online that, hey, by the way, Trey and Matt, they're going to be doing a movie during their South Park summer hiatus. It's going to be in theaters in time for the presidential election. It's not going to be South Park related at all. And oh, by the way, it's an R-rated comedy entirely using marionette puppets. And I didn't even need to know exactly what the plot was. I'm like, I don't know what this is going to be, but I am in from the get-go. And at this particular point in time, I was not the avid theater goer that I was. I was primarily I will wait for DVD to watch a movie. But I made it a point to not only go see this movie in a theater, but I went to the very first showing of this movie, which is a sneak preview, Saturday night before its opening weekend. It was also the first time I ever went to the Century Stadium 14 here in town. So this is a very seismic deal. So I was, like I probably mentioned when I signed up for this episode, this was my most anticipated movie of 2004. And so I saw the movie that night and I laughed my butt off. And so I was really happy to revisit this for the show.
Heck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, so I was introduced to this movie. I would say it was in high school, freshman, sophomore year of high school. Me and my friends were getting into South Park again. You know, we watched it as kids when we weren't supposed to, but then we were kind of getting back into it again. And me and my buddy would have, movie nights, and we'd watch all these, irreverent comedies. And, one day, finally, he's like, "Have you ever watched Team America?" I'm like, "No, I've heard of it a million times, but I never watched it." And I watched it. And going back to school that Monday, it was Matt Damon constantly from us. Yeah, I love this movie. I adore it. I think Trey Parker and Matt Stone are two of the biggest comedic geniuses that we have of our generation. I firmly believe that the 70s and 80s had Monty Python. We get Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
Yes.
And I now, having seen all of their movies, I've seen Team America, like I said, throughout high school, and South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. I watched that probably about this age at 10 years old. Was not, not the, best movie to be watching at 10 years old. But
When you shouldn't have been.
no, I should not have been with our parents, watching it with us too. But that's neither here nor there. It was a cartoon movie, okay? Yeah, I love this movie, and let's just jump into it. So, Team America: World Police, directed by Trey Parker, written by Matt Stone, Trey Parker, and I believe it is, as my IMDb is slow loading, Pam Brady, who also has television work, who was working on with the guys on South Park for a very long time. Am I missing another thing she was known for? Is that kind of her big notoriety?
Primarily her work with Matt and Trey, yeah.
The other one that I saw her in, Hot Rod. She wrote Hot Rod.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Of course, that's right up your alley then.
I love Hot Rod. But yeah, Team America: World Police is a satire of some of the movies we were talking about. I would say it has satirical elements to some of the movies that we have mentioned in our patriotic mini series. Yeah, so it's so let's jump into what the plot of this movie is. If people have never watched Team America: World Police, as ridiculous as it is, it does star marionette puppets, mostly voiced by Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and it stars a popular Broadway actor who is recruited by the world's elite police force, which is they're here to counter terrorism. And 2004, that's kind of the mindset we're all in. We're deep in the Iraq War, and that's what we're going through in the world. And so this is the team that they build together. So basically, they get this Broadway actor to join the team so he can go undercover to infiltrate the terrorist organization to stop them from basically ending the world. So let's jump into some of our favorite moments of Team America: World Police. Derek, what is one of the major scenes that really stands out to you in this movie?
Well, first off, I want to pose a question to the group here. So this is Backlot 605. This is the premier South Dakota film podcast. What I want to raise to the group is Team America a South Dakota movie? Because large chunks of this movie takes place in the Team America base inside Mount Rushmore. I think we just need to say right off the bat, does this count?
This beats Dances with Wolves. I mean, that's it. That's it. And if people who are not from South Dakota don't know, yes, there is a secret headquarters inside of Mount Rushmore. Like,
we just don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it because no one talks about South Dakota, and we're not going to tell people that we have that.
Right?
It's run by marionette puppets. Like, I don't know what's so crazy for people to think, with that. But
do you know how hard it is to keep that mountain looking like it does, knowing that they keep trying to blow it up?
After who blows? Michael Moore blows it up?
Yep.
Yes.
That is correct.
Yeah, we rebuilt it. No one talks about us rebuilding things in South Dakota. We rebuilt Mount Rushmore to what it is today.
Well, when was the last time anybody heard from Michael Moore? I mean, come on. I mean, there's a correlation there.
God damn it, I love this movie.
It starts strong, it stays strong, it ends strong. Like, it doesn't waver, and that's what's fantastic about it. And I mean, for me, for the sake of what's the one scene, Casey, that is for me, is I can't say it's one scene. I have to say it's the music. It's the soundtrack that accompanies this that is a huge part of this movie. Not only do you have the movie that it is, but it's almost a musical on top of it too, because there's so much music that is pushed into it, even to the introduction of Gary as the actor, and when he's playing their version of Rent called Least.
Least.
Singing the song "Everyone Has AIDS."
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the aspect of the different genres of music that Trey Parker and Matt Stone have been able to create for this film is, for me, the music is the scene for me for the sake of this film.
And to Brian's point about, how the soundtrack just tackles the various genres. So you've got Everybody Has AIDS, which is kind of their, Broadway parody against they had done a lot of Broadway parodies in South Park, Make It Longer and Uncut.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, after this movie, they go on to do The Book of Mormon, which is a full-blown Broadway musical and wins all the Tonys and gives us Joss Gad in the process. So that's brilliant. Also, the fact that song ends with them saying AIDS 20 times in a row.
Did you really? Please tell me you found that somewhere and you didn't count while they were doing it.
Oh, I counted while they did it when I watched the movie in full last night. That's how I had to. I've got notes written on my phone here of everything I noted watching this movie. So I take Team America very seriously, and I would hope that all Americans do too. So you've got Everybody Has AIDS. You've got obviously America Fuck Yeah, which is just this 80s synthesizer anthem. That's just brilliant. I mean,
their Top Gun Danger Zone.
Exactly. And we'll get into the Top Gun facsimiles later here when we talk about Gary, but there's that. And as long as we're talking about that song, we also have to talk about what they call the Bummer remix.
The Johnny Cash version.
Yes, the sad version that occurs at the midpoint of the movie, which is just breathtaking. So we have that. We have what else do we have? We've got
Kim Jong Il's So Ronry.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
I'm So Ronry. Which is actually kind of tugs at your heartstrings a little. I won't lie. And I think this is actually the song they were trying to get nominated for an Oscar and failed. And I only call this out because in the notes as I was watching the DVD extras, they specifically called out, we are going to push I'm So Ronry for the Oscars because if it gets nominated, we want Kim Jong-il, avowed movie fan Kim Jong-il, to show up at the Oscars and sing it. That was their byline.
Derek, did you in your notes, did you pull up what was nominated for Best Original Song that year?
Yes, and they are mostly forgettable. So the song that won was from the Motorcycle Diaries, and it actually has a Spanish name, so I want to make sure I get it right. Actually, I'll just move on from that. But the other songs that were nominated were Accidentally in Love from Shrek 2, the song Believe from The Polar Express, the Josh Groban one, and then there were two others. There was one from The Circus called, hold on here, let me scroll down here, Look to Your Path. And then there was the song they added for the Gerard Butler Phantom of the Opera movie, Learn to Be Lonely. So long story short.
So we got the wrong Ronry song in there.
Yeah. So long story short, I would dump any one of these songs for any song in Team America. I would probably dump all 5 of these and have 5 songs from this movie be nominated because that's how good they are. We also had Only a Woman, which is the love scene song. Probably the weakest link in the soundtrack because that's not what we're focused on at that time.
No.
There's the breakup song, which is the Pearl Harbor Sucks song, which
that one should have been nominated.
Which the sheer genius of them taking, your standard breakup song and just have it be a lacerating 4-minute criticism of Pearl Harbor. That's brilliant. Then we also have the montage song, which is actually a song was written for a South Park episode. They took it from South Park and they put it in the movie because what is a movie without a montage? So,
yes.
So that is there. Oh, and I also forgot, Freedom Isn't Free, which is their Toby Keith ripoff when Gary goes to D.C.
And literally takes the doll to D.C.
And, without getting ahead, I just love how it's very clear they sent some PA to DC with a digital camera and said, "Here, just get as many shots of Gary at as many memorials as you can. Like, here he is at the memorial wall. Here he is, at the veteran cemetery with him laying against a tombstone.
Where he's
great stuff
barely
all
the
around.
size of the tombstone.
Oh, and I love the fact that when they did it in so pretty much straight up camcorder style. Like there was no production value whatsoever. Just making sure that no hands were being shown and whatnot. Like it was so gritty. It was so beautiful.
Like Derek said, I'm like, I could see Trey Parker and Matt Stone doing it themselves too, just taking the marionette puppet with them to go to DC and shoot this on a camcorder they had in the back of their car.
Yep.
Well, that's a good question. That might be a good segue because this movie was an absolute pain in the butt to make. So this movie, they started filming like at the end of May around Memorial Day. They immediately fell behind because when they started filming, what Trey Parker and Matt Stone found out is that it is really, really hard to get marionette puppets to do stuff. And so they basically had to rewrite the movie to not have the puppets do as much complex stuff. They also had to have like 3 units shooting simultaneously because this movie had to be in theaters 4 months after they started filming. And to this day, Trey Parker and Matt Stone will say that the making of Team America was the hardest thing they've ever done in their professional career.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that once they realized how difficult it was and they had to rewrite a few things to accommodate for that, I think is what makes the comedy in this film that much better, to be perfectly honest. I think it was a happy accident because, like, for instance, when towards the beginning of the movie when they're all dancing and they're just kind of just like hobbobbling around and whatnot, or just the fact that when they're just trying to walk around, everything like that, they're just doing it whole haphazardly because they were like, you know what, these are puppets. We're not going to get any better than this. So let's just go with it. And I think that's what makes it even better.
Well, even look at the opening of the movie, the first fight scene in Paris, where
Yes.
they have their like Matrix-esque fight scene, and it's just puppets like just smashing into each other for a minute.
Yes.
Funny you should mention The Matrix because they hired the cinematographer of the Matrix trilogy to do this movie, Bill Pope, because they wanted, an action cinematographer to do an action movie. So like, we're hiring the Matrix guy. So
at this point right now, they've got that money. They're like, hey, you know what? All the other stuff doesn't cost us as much. Let's spend the money where we can get the good hired talent.
And speaking, some of the other people that worked on this movie, I've known about this pretty much since I watched this movie, but the Chiodo brothers did much of the puppeteering on this. And if you don't know that name, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which was their creation. One of the brothers directed it, all written by them, but they did all the clown work and the clown makeup and costumes for that. And yeah, I would like to see them and Trey Parker, Matt Stone work together somewhere. That'd be fun. But
that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And that's a good point because Trey and Matt have not made a movie since Team America. Granted, they're basically making tons of South Park money at this point, so maybe don't need to. But, they also haven't done much else other than the Book of Mormon, which I'm sure at some point in the next decade or so we'll get the movie version of that. But, I was kind of surprised to realize that it has been 16 years since we've gotten a Trey and Matt movie, full stop.
Yeah, and if you look at that career that they had, because they started with Cannibal the Musical, and then it went pretty much to South Park, and their life has pretty much been South Park. But in those first few seasons when South Park was really hitting, they were trying to get into the movies then with like Orgasmo and Basketball and South Park Bigger, Longer, Uncut, which is probably arguably along with Team America their biggest movie. So it's a wonder that they were continuously getting better with their stuff. I mean, South Park was based on something they previously did, but Team America World Police, I think, is my favorite of the movies that they've done. And I wonder if it is the rigorous, schedule and conflicts that came up while shooting this movie that they're like, no, we're just never going back to doing that again. But I mean, they do it every week with South Park because they have less than 7 days to make an episode, which I think works to their benefit there, and I think it really works to the benefit here. I think some of the best moments are just because like we just have to do it. Like we don't have any time to do it any other way. Let's just do it how we're doing it. So yeah, what are some of the other scenes you guys want to talk about in this movie that just really stand out?
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon. I just love the behind the scenes of why that's the joke.
Okay, please tell me because I'm not sure.
Basically, when they molded the Matt Damon puppet, he looked like he was, let's say, slow. So they gave him a little bit of a slower accent in Matt Damon saying his name continuously throughout the movie.
Yeah, the way it was originally in the script was, Matt Damon was just a normal, regular celebrity, just like every other 24 celebrities in this movie. It was only because of the look, as Casey mentioned, that they went to the route that they did for Matt Damon. And of course, it's one of the more memorable parts of the movie. When I pulled up the Wikipedia page, they actually had like an interview quote with Matt Damon from a few years ago where he basically says like, Matt and Trey are funny guys. I just don't know why they treated me this way in the movie, not knowing the story behind it.
Yeah.
That's probably a good segue to talk about one of the big components of this movie, which is them constantly ripping on various actors in this movie, the Film Actors Guild, as it will. So
yeah, the word we will not say.
Yes.
Good call. Good call.
Led, of course, by Alec Baldwin, who Gary calls the greatest living actor, of course.
I mean, he is.
Because he's not the other Baldwins. He's Alec Baldwin.
We're covering all the Baldwins in this miniseries. I'm
we are.
impressed.
We have actually.
We have officially covered. Thanks to Born on the 4th of July, we have covered the Baldwin brothers.
Yes. This is definitely the best performance of any of the Baldwins in this movie. I mean, he's the greatest actor that's working today, so we cannot ignore that. I love the celebrity cameos that they have in this. What's funny is like they have George Clooney, who is very much a guy who is very friendly with Trey Parker, Matt Stone.
He's the reason they have their career.
Yeah,
was because George Clooney shared that Spirit of Christmas short with everybody in Hollywood. So,
and I believe he plays. Is it Cartman's dog in South Park?
Or Stan's dog, Sparky.
Is it Stan's? Yes.
Yeah. It is one of those things. As much as that they are poking fun at some of these actors, I do think it would have been hilarious if they, obviously it's tongue in cheek, it's meant to be funny and whatnot, is if they would have got, whether it be an Alec Baldwin or any of the people to play themselves in this.
I would slightly disagree because that's the South Park model of this, where they poorly imitate the people that they're playing. They never usually have the actual actors in those roles, but then it's just Trey Parker and Matt Stone basically sometimes just doing their own voice, and saying that they're Ben Affleck or whoever. But I think this fits in the mold of like this is a very much tonally this is a brother to South Park in that, especially in that sense.
The one other thing I should mention is there was only one actor depicted in the movie who was actually ticked off at how Matt and Trey depicted them. And can you guess who that one person was?
Alec Baldwin?
Nope, he was okay with it. He actually said in an interview that his daughter often uses the line, "You are workhorse Alec Baldwin," to her dad. So he's fine with it. No, it's actually big surprise. Sean Penn.
Yes,
that is right. Sean Penn, right before this movie came out, he wrote a letter to Rolling Stone, an open letter, basically saying, that Trey and Matt shouldn't be making a movie that, basically dismisses, what's going on in Iraq, and they shouldn't be telling people that voting is worthless on the eve of presidential election, and that he would actually be willing to take Trey and Matt to Iraq to see what was going on there. And he signed the letter, and I quote, "All the best and a sincere fuck you, Sean Penn."
But in the style that is, these guys here and whatnot, is anybody who watches this is going to know and understand that as much fun and poking that they're doing, they're giving the message of saying, hey, we need to be proactive about this. We need to vote. We need to do all these things here. Here's just our comedic way of to bringing it to light, to bring it to attention. And I think him seeing it that way, I think he misses the point altogether.
I mean, the whole satirical point of the movie is in the title: Team America, World Police.
Right.
As we think we are in America most times, the world police. Yeah, so the satirical elements of this movie still hold up today. You might have references from 2004 that don't fully work, and I mean, in the case of who the main villain is in this movie, you just swap it out for Kim Jong-il to Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
And we see that later with the James Franco and Seth Rogen film, The Interview, which is a great companion piece to this movie.
Yes.
God, I love Kim Jong-il in this movie. Yeah, that's one of my favorite songs in this movie is the So Ronry song. I can see why that's the one they pushed for the one to get nominated for an Oscar. Yeah, what are some of the other things? One of the scenes that really stands out to me is the entire sci-fi angle of transforming Gary, the main character of this movie, into a terrorist, and they basically just glue some globs of hair on his face.
And then
brown,
the brown paint.
And the brown paint, except like it's like missing like around the eyes and the
and the top of his head and whatnot. Oh no, I absolutely, they're like, you got all the state-of-the-art equipment, and he pops out. You're like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And yet he's supposed, and then he goes into it and he's completely like, oh yeah. Everything's fine, and he starts rambling off a bunch of, gibberish, and oh yeah, he must be part of
Durka, Mohammed Jihad. Oh,
and I did like that, the fact that they basically were just using certain words, not actually like translating into like legit.
I mean, one of the terrorists yells Muhammad Ali as they're going into battle. Trey Parker and Matt Stone fully get what they're doing, and I love that there's quite a few like Star Wars references in this too. I mean, they walk into the terrorist bar and they're playing the canteen. It's the cantina scene from A New Hope.
I would love to know how they got the rights to be able to use the Cantina song in the first place.
It's slightly different. It's enough that they can get. Yeah, it's enough that they can get away with it. Yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes is the leading up to that, and then what follows right after is, do you remember the sign if you're in trouble? And it's just him like moving his arms back and forth.
That's right.
Yes.
And then the ensuing chase after is hilarious. I love the chase scene after.
Why? Because they blow up Cairo.
Yeah, they just blow everything up. Yeah.
And so that's a good point too, is the production value. So they hired the guy who did the explosions on Independence Day and won an Oscar for said explosions to do all the explosions in this movie. And one of the featurettes on the DVD is them talking about like, oh, here's how we're going to blow up the Panama Canal, and here's how we're going to blow up the Eiffel Tower and have it destroy the Arc de Triomphe. All the stuff that goes into that, because again, just doing good old practical explosions, something we don't get much these days.
Yeah.
It's very American.
I just love when they blow up the Panama Canal. Just everyone is yelling, "Oh no, me gusta!"
I enjoy like when they blow up Paris and just the Eiffel Tower just all of a sudden just like
perfectly falls.
And one thing I enjoyed about when they were blowing up these sets and whatnot is that if you're talking Independence Day and probably enough CGI and probably outside of the practical effects, the additional work that was done to it and whatnot, is that these things look like they're just small play sets that were blown up. Like they did nothing to make these look more real than what they were. They were just, here's the small little thing of paper mache and clay, and let's just blow it up. Like I enjoyed that fact of it, that they didn't try to overplay the set pieces any more than what the marionettes that were performing.
Yeah, I just love like some of the visual gags that are in this movie. What are if you guys had to pick one, your favorite song from this movie, and then your favorite scene from this movie. Because there is one scene we're kind of beating around the bush of not talking about, which is maybe the greatest scene in cinematic history. But
Please tell me that was not pun intended.
beating around the bush.
Yeah.
Fun. The pun is fully intended. Beating around the marionette bush. So should we just, should we literally quit beating around the bush? Let's talk about it. The greatest scene in cinematic history is in this movie. The greatest sex scene ever is the sex scene between Gary and Lisa in this movie, between two marionette puppets. Oh my God!
I remember when I watched this last week. Again, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. When we talked about doing this movie, I was like, I'm all in and whatnot. I forgot most of this scene, and I just remember sitting here through this going, oh my God, I forgot exactly how intense this scene is in this film. It is so
I have to ask, did you guys watch I assume you guys watched the R-rated cut of this movie in preparation for the podcast, because that's what's on HBO Max.
Yes.
So I pulled out my unrated DVD of this scene because, for those who don't know, Trey and Matt had to resubmit this movie 9 times to the MPAA.
9 times.
9 times to the MPAA with different edited versions of this scene in order to get an R rating. So the R-rated version of this scene is about 50 seconds long. The unrated version is 1.5 minutes. And pretty much every shot that you see in the R-rated version is a little bit longer, like a couple seconds more than what it is in the R-rated cut. But then there are 2 other things that were added that they had to remove to get this movie an R rating. The first thing is there's a shot of Gary peeing in Lisa's face. And the second shot is Lisa pooping on Gary's face. They had to cut both of those things in order for this movie to get an R rating to get into theaters in America.
That was how I was introduced to this movie, was the unrated cut, because I vividly remember the first time watching this was including those, and subsequent rewatches I'm like, oh, so that's what was cut out. Yeah. I still remember watching that for the first time, and just that's just a gut busting all-timer laugh out loud moment, that scene there. And even this time watching it, still just it gets me to laugh every time.
I guess I don't remember 100% whether or not that was the version that I saw originally or not, because like I said, I didn't see it in the theater, but I can't tell you for sure if what I saw that sounds familiar, but that could just be my brain is assembling what this would have looked like, as I've got brain cells that are trying to commit suicide because they're like, why am I thinking about this?
It's funny that you bring up that they had to go through this 9 times to the MPAA, which is hilarious because we're dealing with puppets and puppets that do not have any reproductive parts showing either. Mm-hmm. He's a Ken doll.
Yeah. And not only this, but this is also a movie that has lots of strong language in it that didn't cause the MPA any issue. You've got a finale in this movie, which is basically all the Hollywood actors meeting their demise in increasingly graphic ways. And they didn't have any issues with that either. But of course, this one scene, that's where the line is drawn.
Yes. All right. So we got that out of the way. Let's move. Favorite. Let's go around the horn here. Favorite song, and then favorite scene from this movie. Derek, I'll start it with you.
I guess ultimately I'd probably have to say America Fuck Yeah is probably my favorite song. If only for just the list of stuff that they rattle off at the end, like McDonald's, fuck yeah, Walmart, fuck yeah,
The Gap,
and then yes, sportsmanship, books. So I love that. I'm trying to recall what is the most laughable moment of the movie. I think the one that's always stuck in my mind, and this is just kind of them just going for it, is in the third act when Gary's down in his ropes, he's at the bar. He just had the drunk guy come up to him, do the version of the speech that plays at the end of the movie, and then Gary goes into the alley And while dramatic music plays for a good minute and a half, obviously there's a hose hooked up to Gary, and Gary just vomits excessively for a minute and a half, ending on a mile-wide puddle of his vomit. It's a very
The puddle is just the perfect ending to that scene too.
Just the fact that the music builds up every time he
Yeah.
throws up is hilarious. Brian, what about you?
In terms of the songs itself, I do have to agree. I think it has to be the same one that Derek said. Whether it be the bummer version or the regular version, they're both fantastic. In terms of scene, I mainly want to bring this up because he himself has not been brought up. But is the fact that it's convincing Gary, or when Gary comes back and says, "I want to be part of the team," and he's working with Spotswoods to show exactly how much this means to him and what he will do to be a part of the team, and the whole going into the being being the dick, the asshole, and all that stuff and whatnot. Where he realizes that he needs to be part of all of this here. I don't know why we haven't even spoke about Spotswoods, because he's just the overall just over the top guy at home base.
So that's where I was going to go with my two of my favorite moments. Include when they're in battle, and his chair is just moving back and forth, and then it's upside down.
Upside down.
It's hilarious. It's such a little thing that you can do in situations like that are hilarious. But then towards my favorite line from this movie is just because of the way it's delivered is when Michael Moore shows up to blow up their headquarters, and he just looks at him. He's like, "Jesus, titty fucking," and just blows up. That is my favorite line from this movie. If something crazy happens, I usually will say that in his voice like that. And and then of course we have to the speech at the end is hilarious. I love the speech, and it actually, in the gross out humor that is the South Park, Trey Parker, Matt Stone type of humor, the dicks, fuck, assholes, and pussies joke and speech, it works. It works.
Yes.
And that's the fact that's how he beats Alec Baldwin in acting is tremendous.
Or the fact that he gets his inspiration from a drunk at the bar.
Yeah. My favorite song though, I think, is "Freedom Isn't Free." I think that is my favorite song of this, just because of the fact that vividly going back to 2004 when I was 10 years old, Toby Keith, Rah Rah America songs were on the radio constantly, and having that as a perfect parody of that is cinematic comedic genius. So yes, so let's wrap up our discussion on Team America World Police. Let's give out our rating and recommendation for the movie. So I think we all highly recommend Team America. How would you guys? What would you guys give this out of five Matt Damons?
I'll probably give it a 4.5. I mean, there are a few things that haven't aged well, but the big laughs this movie generates, they still charm me to this day. The soundtrack, some of the lines of dialogue, the celebrity ripping. I certainly still enjoyed it, and I had good nostalgia revisiting this. So I'll give it 4.5.
Brian?
I actually went to Letterboxd because I was like, what did I rate this? Oh, look, I forgot to put my rating in because I purposely was waiting for this exact thing. I have to agree with Derek. I have to go with 4.5. I mean, there are those couple instances that, like you said, they don't age well. But I think at the same time, too, those are the things that Trey Parker, Matt Stone really don't care that they have aged well. And they just made their movie to make their movie just like they do to make all their stuff. It's over the top. It's campy. It's exactly what you expect out of a movie with puppets. That has been made by the guys from South Park. So it's obnoxious. It's not going to be for everybody. Not everybody's going to enjoy this movie. But at the same time, too, if they don't, well, then that's on them.
Yeah, I give this 5 Matt Damons out of Matt Damon. This is one of my favorite comedies. I love this movie. This, along with South Park, Bigger, Longer, Uncut, are, I mean, easily top 10, maybe top 20 favorite comedies ever. I love the sharp satire of it. I unabashedly love South Park, so this is right up my alley.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a high recommendation for me. And if you haven't watched this in a long time, go ahead, give it a rewatch. Like Derek said, it is on HBO, whatever streaming service they have now.
HBO Max.
There's 17 different services they have. Yeah, so Team America, World Police. So
And I do just want to mention, since we were talking about star ratings, this is very convenient because just as he did with the last movie I was on here to discuss, Wet Hot American Summer, Roger Ebert gave Team America 1 star.
Of course he did.
well, he's dead now, so take
So-
that for what it is.
Ouch.
I just totally slam Roger Ebert, I guess.
You just did.
A dead guy. Yeah, I feel bad now. Yeah, but this is not a Roger Ebert movie at all.
No.
Much like the last movie we talked about, Wet Hot American Summer.
Yes.
Yeah, let's wrap this thing up, and we got to throw out some plugs that we have for things going on here. First of all, if you want to find this podcast and any other podcast we're doing, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and on YouTube, as well as backlot605.com for our latest movie news, reviews, articles, and anything else going on Backlot 605 related. Backlot605.com.
Yes.
Brian, where can they find us on the social media?
On the social medias, hey, you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we try to keep you guys up to date, not only what we got going on, but what's coming up. You can also check us out on Facebook with our South Dakota Film Community group, where we just like to, what our thoughts and things that's going on. If you are somebody who's, whether you enjoy films, making films, whatever the case is, join the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. We talk about everything out there, whatever the case is. Yeah. So, what else do we got coming up here that we should probably at least talk about, Casey?
We should talk about a couple things that we got coming up. First of all, let's talk about our Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone live show that we will be doing August 30th, which our guest for this week, Mr. Derek Vierink, will be a part of. Derek, this is because we have our schedule set out for August, and I'll talk about what miniseries we're jumping into. But Derek, this will be the last time we have you on before then. What do you have to say about this show we have coming up?
I'm very excited about this. I officially started my series of Arnold Sly rewatches last week in preparation for this, and we've got a good 5 weeks to go, and it's going to be, personally for me, I'm very excited to revisit the au revoirs of these two gentlemen. It is certainly an era in action filmmaking that will not be repeated, especially now that the Matt Damons of the world are now our de facto action stars. So, again, I'm really looking forward to this, and it's going to be a fun time all around.
Yeah, I'm starting my watches too. Is there any particular order that you're going in? Because I'm kind of jumping between the two actors and as well as genres as well.
I am what I've started out is I'm holding off on the franchises until the very end because I kind of want to get their non-franchise works out of the way. But I am very much doing a strict watch an Arnold movie, then watch a Sly movie. So last week, I started with Commando on the Arnie side, then I went to Cobra. And then I went back to Arnold for Conan the Barbarian, and then I went to Sly for Over the Top. So that's my goal, just to keep it in balance, because I don't want to weigh this competition toward one guy versus the other. I want both of them to have their equal footing, because both of their canons are well worth putting up against each other. So
very much so.
Yes. So again, August 30th, we will be doing that show on Facebook Live, as well as we are going to be doing the show live in person as well. And that'll be at Spellbound Magic Shop here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, off the corner of 41st and Marion. You can check us out there. We do have limited seating. So if you want to get a good seat for that, make sure you show up early. But we are also streaming live on Facebook as well that same evening. But let's jump into what we're doing in August. August, we are starting a new miniseries as we have wrapped up our patriotic miniseries with Team America World Police. So next week, we're going to kick it off with a little miniseries we're going to be doing here for the month of August. Which
I would just like to point out that you messed out that segue perfectly already.
Why is that?
We should be hitting it off.
Oh, we should be hitting it off. We're heading to a field of dreams, if you will, for the month of August.
See, there you go. Much better.
Because we're taking the at bat for baseball movies. I'm going to keep going with these, Brian. Like you told me to go for them. But so we're
swing for the fences.
We're stepping up to the plate here for baseball movies for the month of August, and we're gonna tee it up to field. I almost said kicking off, but that is not a baseball reference.
Neither is teeing it up.
Sure. There's a T in baseball. Anyway, let's just frickin' talk about what we're going to talk about. Field of Dreams is the first movie we're talking about for this miniseries. So that's where we're going to be kicking it off with next week in our baseball miniseries for the month of August. Baseball season has just begun here as of late, a very late season to be kicking it off. But, people are in the baseball mood, and so we thought we would deliver some of the baseball goods on the movie side as well. So Field of Dreams comes out next week for us on the podcast.
At least this is a miniseries that we can associate with something that's outside of us, finally.
Outside of movies?
Yeah, well, just, outside of something we're like, hey, what do we want to do this month? We can associate this with baseball season. We're finally getting something of a baseball season, whether it be only, 60 games. But, hey, we're getting some.
Yeah, we're you only get 60 games, but you're going to get 4 weeks of baseball movies with us. So that is next week with Field of Dreams. We will be having the state general manager, Stephen Dahlmeyer, on that one with us to talk about one of his favorite movies, Field of Dreams. So, yeah, that'll be next week's episode. So, do you guys have any other final thoughts here on this episode of the Backlot 605 podcast?
Everyone should watch Team America because it's a fantastic film.
I agree. I concur.
Yeah. Swing for the fences, guys. Let's do it. Anyway, thank you again, Derek, for joining us on this episode. For Casey Kelderman and Brian Mensing, this has been the Backlot 605 podcast, and we'll see you next time on the Backlot of South Dakota.
Matt Damon.